Hey fellow music fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and today we're talking about 3 rising bands that have gained almost unprecedented adoration from their fans and have been credited by many people as really refueling their passion for rock music. And these bands are The Warning, Liliac, and Band-Maid. Now these bands are all completely their own entities, and they are also extremely musically distinct from one another, so I don't think it would be fair to just kind of lump them all together. However, I do feel that they actually share a lot in common in terms of why their fan dedication is so strong. That goes well beyond the obvious external factors and also the fact that they are all incredibly talented. So I thought it would be fun today to talk about these similarities and really the psychology behind the fandom of these bands and also what sets them apart from one another. So in this video, I'll start by talking about what I think all 3 of these bands share in common, and then discuss why, despite having all of these similarities, you probably still have a strong preference towards one of them, or at least have a very noticeable preference hierarchy. And then I'd like to also share what I personally like about these bands and why I choose to support them so often on this channel. And if you're not familiar with any of the bands that we are talking about today and you want to learn more about them, I do have full-length videos about each of them on the channel. I will go ahead and put those links in the description box below. So I have to start by saying that rock fandom is nothing new, and certainly these 3 bands are not the first or only to have such a dedicated following. We can look at bands like Rush or Kiss and see that many artists really do have an almost cult-like following. And for just about every band that exists, whether they be mainstream or underground, we can usually find a group of dedicated fans that have formed some type of community to celebrate them. But I chose these 3 bands in particular only because so many of you have shared in the comments, and I've seen this over and over and over again, that they are personally responsible for you getting excited about music again, that maybe you felt disconnected from music or you haven't felt like there's been a lot of bands to get excited about recently, and that you found this band or all of these bands and there was something about them that drew you in and made you want to follow and support them in a way that many of you say you never have before for any other band. And because I also love and follow these bands, I always find it enjoyable to read the comments about them across the different social media platforms. And something that I have found to be very interesting is that so many people say exactly the same things about each of these bands, even though they are so distinct. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these factors. But as always, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Let me know if there's something that I missed or if there is just something you'd like to add. We'll start with some of the more obvious factors and then we'll get a little bit deeper. So first and foremost is the actual music. Now, in each of these cases, we are talking about band members who are absolutely masters of their own instrument and play what we can only describe as real music. They all embody in their own unique way the true spirit of rock, which is something that I think that once people saw again, they realized they've really been missing. All 3 bands also excel at playing live, and whether you're able to see their shows or just see video clips online, you feel their energy and you see that they're not a product. They are the real deal. And I think this is something that we have just been craving. Real music and quality live shows. The second obvious commonality is that these bands are either entirely comprised of female artists or they prominently feature them. So in the case of The Warning and Band-Maid, we have all the members that are female, and in the case of Liliac, the drummer and the singer are female. Now I think it would be incredibly easy for someone who wasn't really familiar with the bands to try to attribute their success to this and say, well, of course they're famous, they're beautiful, it's all about image here. But I would definitely disagree with this. Now, it is of course true that they are incredibly attractive, and it is something that people do point out. However, I don't think the actual artists really are placing that much focus on it. Maybe it's something that the fans do notice or appreciate, but I don't think that the bands are intentionally trying to really draw attention to that. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all for people expressing themselves in any way that they want to. However, I think in this case, they have made a calculated decision to make their success be about the music and not be about their personal appearances. But even with all that being said, I still think that having females in the band is a draw for them. This is something that is truly an asset. I think that in the past that female artists did not get the respect or credit that they deserved, but I think more recently people have been embracing and really celebrating female musicians, especially when they are as talented as the bands that we're talking about today. Now, the third commonality that I want to mention is the personalities of these performers. They all seem to be incredibly nice and incredibly humble. They appear to have absolutely no egos. And literally every single person I have ever spoken with who has met any member of any of these bands has only positive things to say about the interaction. They all seem approachable, gregarious, and very likable. You get this sense that if you knew them, you'd want to be friends with them, or that if you ran into them on the street somewhere, that they would actually give you the time of day. And I wish that these types of personalities were more prevalent in rock, but unfortunately we see a lot of bands that appear to be arrogant and egotistical, or give the impression that they are just not on the same level as the audience. Now, of course, these are not the only three bands that seem to have really likable personalities, but I think psychologically, when we perceive artists to be nice, we want to support them on a level that is more than just the musical level. We want to support them personally. We root for them and we want to get to know them better. And this actually brings me to my next point, which is that these three bands seem to really love and appreciate their fans. They take this relationship very, very seriously. And in the case of The Warning and Liliac specifically, they dedicate a lot of time and energy to their social media accounts and their Patreon pages, where they very generously and enthusiastically engage with their fans all the time. I think that Band-Maid has a little bit of a disadvantage here only because there is a language barrier, but we still see them putting incredible effort into trying to connect with their fans and showing them their appreciation. This is something that we can definitely see at their shows and certainly see in interviews. So in all of these cases, instead of the devotion being very one-sided, it really actually feels like it is a mutual devotion, and also that it's very sincere. And that brings me to my next point, which is fan access. Now, because of social media, these bands are also able to kind of take us with them wherever they are going, and we are able to see what they are doing behind the scenes. And in some cases, they speak very candidly, or they share intimate moments of their life, which helps us to get to know them not only as a performer, but also as a person. Another commonality is that none of these bands are huge yet, and in many cases, fans have been able to follow them from the beginning. And in the case of The Warning and Liliac, fans have actually been able to watch them grow up because they were actually still children when they first entered the scene. But in all three cases, at least for now, the bands haven't gotten so big that we aren't actually able to get tickets to see their shows, or they've stopped including us in the different things that they are doing. So fans really have this sense that they are in on this amazing secret. There's this feeling like you get to be a part of something that a lot of other people don't know about yet. So it's almost like being in an exclusive club, and it's always great to feel like you got in on the ground floor of something. So I think that element is there, but I also think there is something special about the actual communities. There just seems to be such an unusual level of camaraderie and support between the members of these fandoms. It's like through the love of this music, they've been able to find like-minded people that share their excitement about these bands. And in a lot of cases, not only do they interact online, but they also meet up in person. So I think that's something that really does make these fandoms stand out. They are incredibly united. There is this feeling of belonging and acceptance. It's almost like this giant family that has come together to support and promote these bands. Now, going in a completely different direction, another commonality between them is that they all have at least one element of novelty to them. And I hate to even bring that up because I think as soon as you say the word novelty, it's almost like they're not standing on their own talent, or that they are hiding behind a gimmick of some kind, which I definitely do not think is the case for any of these bands. But there is something non-musical about each of these groups which have become talked talking points. Now, of course, in the case of Band-Maid is the maid costumes. Whether or not you like these costumes, you have to admit that it helps them to stand out. And I personally was kind of iffy on the costumes, but I have grown to really like them. I don't think that they need to have them. I don't think that they are relying on them, but I think it does add to the show. It adds an element of fun, and it gives them a very distinct visual identity, kind of like Kiss. And in the case of Liliac and the Warning, they are families. In both cases, every single sibling is in the band. And I think this is something that is very interesting. It's something that people do really like. And again, I don't think that any of these things are directly responsible for the popularity of these bands, but I don't think these elements have hurt them at all. I think that they may have actually really helped with the initial intrigue. And the last commonality that I want to mention, I think is particularly interesting, and that's that despite going against all the factors that we would normally associate with rock music, there's something kind of wholesome about all of these bands. And I'm not saying that this is either good or bad. I'm just saying that it is noteworthy. And I think that the family factor plays into this a little bit for the two bands. But I think in general, when you go to these concerts, you notice that none of them are swearing on stage and none of them are relying on outrageous behavior or tactics to get attention. I think in all three cases, there's just this really impressive contrast between playing really hard and aggressive music and then just being incredibly decent people both on and off stage. And I think in a lot of cases, even when bands are made up of incredibly nice, decent people, this is something that they don't always show on stage because they think it's going to make them look a little bit less credible. But I think in the case of these three bands, it really shows that it is all about the music for them. It is not about the image. And I actually think it takes a lot of courage for them to get out there in the world of rock and not have such a tough exterior, because it's something that we really do associate with the genre. So I think overall, these three bands really are breaking a lot of molds, much more so than people tend to give them credit for. They really are doing a lot of things very differently. And I think not only does this help us to understand their rising success, but also helps us to understand why fans are so dedicated to them. But now I'd like to quickly touch upon some of the factors that, despite these bands having all of these commonalities, actually make them very different from one another and might help to explain why so many of us have such a strong preference towards only one of them. Keep in mind, however, that a lot just comes down to our personal taste, and that's something that is highly subjective. It's also something that I have created 2 different videos about, so if you are interested in the psychology behind our musical preferences, I will go ahead and link those videos in the description box below. But let's go ahead and talk about these bands one by one. So starting with The Warning, and this is all in addition to all of the amazing qualities that we've already discussed, including their talent, their incredible live shows, and their very likable personalities. What makes them so special, in my opinion, is the sophistication of their songwriting. They simply cannot write a bad song. They have such catchy hooks and they make such interesting and unexpected musical choices. I think it really goes beyond being able to just play well. There is really an artistry to their music. They also really have a lot to say. Now, if you're a person who tends to focus a lot on the lyrics, and I definitely am, this is something that probably matters to you a lot and helps you to connect with the music even more deeply and helps you to be stimulated on an intellectual level. In fact, recently I made a video about the band Rush, and I happened to be wearing a Warning t-shirt, and I was overwhelmed by how many people said in the comments that they were also fans of both Rush and The Warning. But this does not surprise me in the least, because Rush is another band that is known for the sophistication of their songwriting, both musically and lyrically. So I think this is where The Warning really does stand out, but as I've said in many videos, this is a band that really does check every every single box for me. Next we have Band-Maid. Now I'm going to address this in a separate video, but I think there is something really unique and exciting that is happening in the Japanese rock and metal scene. They are definitely bringing a new energy and really helping to revive rock as a genre. But I still think that Band-Maid is taking it to a completely new level. I think a lot of people really do like the Maid aesthetic and the fun aspect to their music, but I think what really sets them apart is their actual musicianship. They are insanely talented, and their music really showcases just how well they can play their instruments. Now, if you've heard the Band-Maid song From Now On, which is an instrumental, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I think fans that appreciate bands who can shred are going to be the most drawn to this one because they really feature that ability in their songwriting. They're also really diverse. They have like 100 songs, but they all stand out from one another. So that really shows that they're comfortable trying new things and that they are really innovative, which means that their music is never going to get boring. I've also come to love the fact that they kind of playfully spotlight the fact that they are female by wearing these maid costumes, but then throw it in the face of the audience that any negative assumptions that they may have about female musicianship is clearly 100% incorrect, which I think is a very powerful statement. And last is Liliac. Now, I think it really says a lot about this band that they've been able to gain this much popularity while still being unsigned and independent. I think that really shows that they are very good at what they do. I think the edge that Liliac has that's really helping here is the element of nostalgia from people finding their covers. I know that's how I found the band. I was looking up a Dio song, I think it was Holy Diver. I found their cover and I was completely blown away. They carefully select songs that people love and miss, and then they play them just so well. And in the case of Melody, who is the singer, she sounds exactly like Dio. So it's like they are able to revive this music that is so meaningful for so many people. Now, of course, they also play their own original music, and they are certainly not the only band to ever play covers. In fact, both The Warning and Liliac cover Enter Sandman by Metallica. But here is a great example of how very different these bands think and how very different they write. So The Warning took the song and kind of created something new from it, whereas the strategy of Liliac was to really play up that aspect of nostalgia by making the cover as close to the original as they possibly could, given the fact that Melody is a female. Something else that I've noticed about Liliac is that although the members of the actual band are quite young, a lot of their music is actually directed at an older audience, which you may think is a little unusual, but I think it's actually serving them quite well, because then you're able to have the majority of your audience really deeply appreciate you bringing these older songs back to life. In fact, I think they really even get a lot of credit for even knowing these songs. But even though they have all of these things going for them, I don't think that anyone would argue that what makes this band stand out the most is Melody's absolutely incredible voice. It's something that people cannot stop talking about. I also just think it's great that it's so unexpected. You see this beautiful young woman and you're not anticipating her to be able to have a voice like this, and it just kind of hits you in the face. And I think that's kind of true of all the members of the band. You know, they are so very young, yet their music is just so impressive. And I also think that because the father plays such an active role in the band, that there's an even bigger feeling of family between the band and the fans. And I've noticed that the fans are very, very protective over the band, almost like they are their parents themselves, probably because many of them have watched them grow up since they were children. I also want to quickly mention that Liliac is about to release a brand new album of original music. Now, they do already have some original music. They have a full-length album and an EP, but I think the focus still has mainly been on their covers. But I think we're going to see this focus shift to their original music more and more. But I think we also have to appreciate Liliac for giving us the opportunity to relive so many great moments in music by releasing the covers that they have. Now, on a personal note, I'd like to say that I'm deeply thankful for all three of these bands, because even though I am a musician and I am extremely passionate about rock music, before I found them, it had been at least a decade since I was really excited about new music. People actually thought that I was a musical snob because I was only listening to old albums and not really looking for new artists, but it was only because I had really lost hope after being disappointed so many times. But everything really changed for me one day when I was listening to Rick Beato, and someone called in and just in passing mentioned the Mexican sister band, The Warning, and I thought, well, I always support female artists, so let me go ahead and give them a listen. And I found the video for Evolve, and I was just absolutely floored. It was like the best thing I had ever heard. And from there, I just got so inspired to find other new artists. I found Liliac and Plush, and through this channel, I was able to find Band-Maid because so many of you wrote in and said that I had to check them out, that they were absolutely incredible. And I really knew nothing about Japanese rock and metal, so this was all completely new to me, but I heard them, I thought they were just phenomenal, and now I am actually hooked on Japanese rock and metal. And I think that's why it's so important that we share music, because I think music really changes lives. And that's why I also choose to support so many up-and-coming artists on this channel. I truly wish Band-Maid, Liliac, and The Warning all the success in the world. I am definitely rooting for them, and I think their popularity will only continue to rise. I'd also love to hear if you agreed with today's analysis, so don't forget to leave a comment down below. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to add or anything you disagree with. Don't forget to like and share this video and become a subscriber if you aren't one already. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you next week.